You're listening to the Free Thinkers Club Podcast Network.
What's going on, folks? Welcome back to another episode of All Factors Considered. And today we're switching it up a little bit. You know, there was no UFC event this week, but we still here. We still breaking down all of the madness that took place at Bellator 255, which was another step in Bellator's featherweight Grand Prix that's happening. It's a tournament that Bellator does. And if you're not familiar with Bellator, it's probably like the second largest MMA promotion in the United States right now. But we'll get into that in a second, man. Let me introduce my co-host, AJ. How you living, bro? You know, I got to ask you a question right off the bat, and my question is this, man. We just watched an entire Bellator, what more or less would be a pay-per-view, right? 255. You know, it was on Showtime, but it was for free. What do you think about the state of MMA right now? We got one championship. They're debuting on TNT this Wednesday. Bellator just had their Showtime debut. UFC took a week off, and we still had a lot of great MMA matches to watch. How do you feel about the current state of MMA right now?
Man, the current state of MMA right now is like at an all-time high. And to me, it showed like how influential the UFC was during the COVID outbreak, when the UFC was the only ones running events, running things on TV. Kind of brought a lot of crowd attention and really got the casual fans, like we like to call them, really excited about the sport. Now we're seeing it on actual normal TV. It's a good thing to see, man. It reminds me of back in the 90s when it was actually coming on, and we thought this was what it's going to be, but now it's really seems to be gaining some momentum. So I'm excited, man. State of the MMA union is really good. What do you think?
I dig. I'm in agreement with you right there. I will say it's starting to feel a little bit, while it's like dope that it's on TV and whatnot, and, you know, having it on TNT is much different than, you know, HBO versus Showtime and whatnot, but still, UFC on ESPN, one on TNT, and then Bellator on Showtime. I just kind of feel like if we keep progressing at this rate, we might end up taking the boxing route, where it's every time you want to watch MMA, it's got to be a different promotion on a different channel, and that's where it could get a little bit messy. But for the time being right now, man, I love to see it, because not too long ago, Joe Biden was over here saying that MMA is the equivalent of human cockfighting. So it's like we've come a long way, man. And, listen, but that's not what people are here to listen to. And that's not what we're here to talk about, man. So let's do a little bit of record recap before we get started, man. So Bellator 255. I went perfect. First perfect of the year, 5-0, and you went 4-1. But AJ, I do have to admit, it was a little troubling to me, because when you look at the card, right, and we didn't do like the same preparation that we normally do for a UFC card. This was very kind of spur of the moment. But when you can look at a slate of fights and you're like, yeah, I think they're going to win, and they're going to win. How did I know? I just looked over their Tapology page, did a little bit of homework, not the most, but did some homework. And to get damn near all the picks right for both of us, right? 5-0 and 4-1. It's a little troubling to me, right? I don't really like to see that. I think in the UFC that's happened a couple times, and it's really took people by surprise. Like, wow, I can't believe that happened. What does that tell you? Just seeing that right now, what comes to mind when you be like, wow, I was able to pick those all very easily without doing much study?
I think you're right there, because even the one that I got wrong, I only got it wrong. I knew who was gonna win. It was the lady fight,
Laura
the second
Watanbe
one of the night.
Yeah,
the Laura Watanabe. And first off, I don't say this often, Derek, but I found a new fighter that's not in the UFC.
Oh yeah,
she might have lost, but Alejandra Lara, man, she can bang, bro. She got them hands. That was and I only really wanted her to win because I knew it was a striker versus a wrestler, and everybody knows my bias. So it was very easy to see who had the upper hand, and I think it was, like you said, we did spend 10 minutes maybe on each fight just looking at it like, oh, okay, yeah. It was it's weird to see that, like I didn't really expect, especially because a lot of the people in the Bellator's training with a lot of the UFC. So I thought there'd be a lot of competitive action, especially with the other organizations in the industry. But it was interesting. It was it caught me by surprise to be able to look at it and see like, oh, okay, yeah. It seems like a couple weeks ago they were setting up the Sean O'Malley fight. It seems like Bellator is giving some handouts. But,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, too, that we got to take a step back and say UFC has 600-plus fighters on their roster, right? So it's not necessarily the same thing in Bellator. Bellator has maybe half of that, probably 200 really solid fighters in their roster, and you got to build up prospects boxing style a little bit. So not everyone could be the UFC, and it's understandable a little bit to see Bellator give out some of these, don't want to call them handout, no fight is ever a handout, but there were some crazy odds, man. There was like dudes that were minus 1,500, minus 1,000, it was just some of those stuff, and one of those, for example, Tyrell Fortune, which we'll talk about in a second, versus Jack May. He was originally supposed to fight Matt Mitrione, you know what I mean? And that didn't end up panning out, injury replacement. So Jack May gets the rematch. And, like I said, so here, how about we do this, man? How about we start assessing the damage and we start the clock, right? That sounds like a good plan to me. So first thing first, I got to just put this thing up on the screen. So folks, if you're watching, you'll be able to see it. But if you're listening, what I have up on the screen right now is the Bellator Featherweight World Grand Prix. And this is where I want to start off, AJ. We got a lot of time to talk about these fights. You know what I mean? We run through those really quickly, but I really think that this is something we need to take into account. So as we can see, this started off as basically an 8-man tournament, right? And we got that boiled all down to the final, that we see right now, which is Pitbull. I'm sorry. Patricio. There we go, AJ. You saved the day right there. Patricio Pitbull versus AJ McKee in the final of the Bellator Featherweight Grand Prix. Now, let me take that off of the screen really quickly, man, and get back to it. I want to know, before we talk about the real Bellator fights, man, what do you think about the tournament style in 2021, man? Patricio Pitbull is having his title put on the line while he's advancing through the Grand Prix. So if he would have lost tonight, he would have not only lost in the Grand Prix, but would have lost his belt as well. But that means that for his opponent, right? His opponent would have won the belt and had to still go and defend it in the Grand Prix for $1 million. So I just want your thoughts first and foremost about like tournament styles in 2021. It feels a little regional, but I really like it at the same time. So what do you think?
It feels a little regional and it feels a little old school. I did a guest spot on the Friendly Fighter podcast with one of our homies, Tristan, and I was talking about how back in the day, when you start off, you're doing like inter-school fights, basically like smokers and everybody join up, like everybody bring their homies, we're all everybody's doing their little techniques and stuff. And that's kind of how a tournament, man. Back in the day, you got 4 fights in a day and it felt kind of like that. Like you guys made some excitement. It kind of almost a nostalgia factor, which was kind of fun and intriguing. Like it made me more excited about the fights, knowing like, oh, this dude's putting everything on the line and $1 million. And $1 million? Like, all right, bro, there's stacks on the line. This is interesting now.
Yeah, man, and it is really interesting just to even look at it from that perspective, because it reminds me of being at high school watching, wrestling on a Saturday or something, and you got, the round robins or whatever you want to call them. But nonetheless, man, you got to respect Pitbull, Patricio Freire, Pitbull, right? You got to respect the man because he's willing to go put the belt up, and he believes that he's the best in Bellator, arguably the best featherweight in the entire world, and we can talk about that. So let's actually start off at the bottom, if you don't mind, AJ, because I thought that while there was only 2 fights on this main card that I actually felt were truly competitive, and this was one of them, right? So we got Alejandra Lara facing off against Kana Watanbe, there we go, something like. Yep. So let me see. Kana Watanbe. There we go. Apologies, folks. These names, so you get some of these names in there, whatever the case. All right. First off, I was very high on her going into this fight. I knew that she was a black belt judoka. I know that she was very high level in terms of the grappling, but what I saw this Friday night, right? You got to switch everything up, right? Fridays instead of Saturdays. What I saw was not what I expected. And I saw a very big disadvantage in terms of the stylistic matchup. And it reminded me of like watching old school UFC, like UFC 1, where you legitimately have a real deal striker who will take your head off versus someone who basically only knows how to wrestle, knows how to do judo throws and whatnot. Like you said, Alejandra Lara, man, she should not hang her head from this loss because give 1 or 2 extra strikes, like actually landing clean, I think she would have knocked out. You know what I mean? Watanabe. What do you think, man? Alejandra Lara, she took maybe a Kevin Holland approach to the fight where she was just trying to knock her opponent's head off and then ended up getting out grappled, especially in the 3rd round. But overall, do you see both of these prospects? We can break down the fight, but in terms of these prospects, do you see them going up to the higher levels of MMA? Because in all honesty, I could see both of them in the UFC.
I could see them in the UFC, but with a lot of work. I mean,
of course.
Alejandra Lara definitely, like I said, she got those hands and she earned my respect and my fandom, bro. She can bang, but she got out grappled and she got outpaced and out-pushed literally through the entire 2nd and 3rd round. And it was competitive in the 2nd, and then she started just getting outmaneuvered. And I'm gonna mess this name up too. Watanabe, she was not looking good on the feet, very stiff, and was almost taking the Ben Askren approach of just like reaching out. So if you can mix those 2 pros together and like their strengths of both those fighters together, man, they'd be a hell of a fighter in the UFC. But I think with some work, a couple, maybe a year or two, especially with Lara training with Grasso and that they have a real tough team down there in Mexico, man. So with doing that, learning how to defend the grapples, I think she's a lot more of a prospect, but it's hard to get confident on the hands. I think it's a lot easier to get more proficient on the ground game. Sometimes with those hands, either you can strike or you cannot, man.
I'll tell you what, man, if you could dictate where the fight's going to go, you control the fight and you got the upper hand anytime, but you got to be able to close the distance without getting your head knocked off your shoulders. And Watanabe, I'll tell you what, man, she got a chin. She's resilient. You could tell that she was not going to lose that fight because she was like, she probably said something in her head like, I'm not going to lose this fight, dude. I'm going to get you to the ground and I'm going to win. And she's undefeated, right? She's 10-0-1 in her career now in MMA. This was her first fight in America, so we have to take that into account because there's the jitters, you know what I mean? That's the same thing for our boy Manel Kape, right? He fights for the first time in the U.S. and then, he loses because he can't let his hands go, right? It says the mat was too slippery, which we need to return to that. Just really quick aside, right? We got a little bit of hate, on our YouTube talking about how Manel Kape, the shoes might have made a difference. People talking about, whoa, he's fought, you know what I mean, without shoes before. You guys don't know what you're talking about. Do your homework. Well, guess what? He came out and said, he was like, dude, my feet were slippery. I couldn't get my strikes off. I'm just saying, folks, I get it, but there's a difference between when you're in there and when you're just watching, right? I mean, real recognize real. But nonetheless, that's neither here nor there. So I think for Watanabe, man, at this point, they're kind of saying that she more or less should be fighting for a championship next. And I wonder how many of these fighters can parlay this Bellator experience and even going to another promotion. What do you think really quickly? Do you think that Bellator being the number 2 behind UFC, do you still think of it as a trampoline to go to other promotions, right? What are the odds that somebody says, I want to leave Bellator and I want to go to one instead? Why did Mighty Mouse, well, like when I say this, why did Mighty Mouse, who is fighting this Wednesday on TNT, one championship, why did that trade happen UFC and one and not UFC and Bellator? Is it a UFC and Bellator competing? So they're like, no, we don't want to give you one of our best. You know what I mean? Is it like, what could it possibly be that had that allure to let the Eddie Alvarez's and the Mighty Mouses go over to one championship instead of Bellator, where we see Anthony Rumble Johnson and Yoel Romero right now?
That's interesting. I definitely think there's definitely some shady business going on between the UFC and how like the trades go and the cuts go and just kind of how player disbursement, I guess, would work if you're any other sport. Because it's weird. And the weirdest part to me is you don't see Bellator going to one. Or I guess it just might not be as publicized, and that's why we don't see it as much. But yeah, I don't really know where it goes. I personally, like I said, this is total just guessing and bullshit thrown out there. But I could see Dana White not be like, nah, y'all can't go there. You can't fight at that Bellator.
But doesn't it kind of seem like there is this like little inner, beef between, Bellator and the UFC specifically? But then again, it makes you wonder, okay, well, they got rid of Yoel Romero. They cut him and then he signed to Bellator. So was that Dana White maybe being like, all right, whatever, dude, we're done with you anyways. Go over to that promote. I don't know, man. That's kind of neither here nor there, but it is something that it's an interesting point to bring up because, like I said, if the goal is to have competition in MMA, which the UFC absolutely does not want, you have to wonder why there's very few American fighters in one championship, right? Now, there's a lot of American fighters in Bellator, but then you got like the Nurmagomedov takeover in the UFC, and then you got a dude like Usman Nurmagomedov, who we'll talk about in a second, saying we got too many Nurmagomedovs in the UFC. I'll come over to Bellator. We got another one in PFL, all that good stuff, right? So I guess anyways, man, very impressive showing by Alejandra Lara and Kana Watanbe, but I really think that the judoka, man, that grappling is that X factor, and it's going to be really tough to put her away unless you could just keep the fight on the feet the whole time. And oftentimes, what do we see? Fighters getting too overzealous with their hands that they put themselves into grappling range with Watanabe, and she puts them to the ground, man. So I will have to say that was one of the 2 upsets that took place on this entire Bellator card, man. So when I say that this was chalky, when I say that, the favorite was basically winning damn near all the fights, that's basically what the case was. But I will also have to just mention, there were 8 finishes and 4 decisions on this fight. Now, this Watanabe win was a split decision victory, which I don't believe was deserved. I believed it should have been unanimous decision. And I think there should have been a split decision on the main card, and that should have went to the Neiman Gracie versus Jason Jackson fight. I think that one would have been a little more appropriate, but we'll talk about that in just a couple fights. Now, let's move on to the Usman Nurmagomedov facing off against Mike Hamel, man. First and foremost, we have another Nurmagomedov who looks like an absolute elite prospect, man. Not only have we been able to see, Umar Nurmagomedov, right, who fights in the UFC. He's young. I think he's like 20 years old, right? We just saw Abu Bakar Nurmagomedov, who just put it on Jared Gooden, excuse me. Now we got, Usman Nurmagomedov, who at this point, tell me, AJ, he didn't get the finish, but he looked incredibly impressive over a dude who is relentless in his pressure, who is relentless when he walks forward. I think this is some very useful experience for him, being that Usman is only like 22 years old. At what point is it going to be like, all right, the Nurmagomedov, like we just talked about this on the last show, but I just feel like we're going to have Nurmagomedov champions across multiple promotions. Do you think that's what we're heading towards right now?
Oh, 100%, especially because with this fight, I saw the evolution of the Nurmagomedov chain. That flick jab that he had, bro, that was stunning and hurting people. And I think the only reason that oh man, I just lost the Hamel didn't go to sleep is just because he has that tough Wyoming chin. They just eat granite out there. That's the Cowboys fight. That's the only reason. Like that Nurmagomedov was putting it on him, and I think that was the coolest part to me, man. He looked fluid. I haven't seen that from a Russian fighter. He was real fluid, real bouncy, had that karate in and out, bro. He looked good. And then anytime Hamel would try to take him down, he's just like, all right, whatever, man. Like, go ahead and try. I got heavy hips. I'm just going to twist it one way. I'll end up on top. It's all good. That was very impressive, high level.
That's what I love to see right now, is that the younger they are and the more Nurmagomedov's coming in, they're already nice with their striking. So that's the most dangerous fighter who says, like, I don't want to wrestle you, bro. I'd rather just kick your head off. I'd rather throw a million kicks at you. And I think when you look back at the fight stats, Usman threw like a very balanced attack between his strikes and his kicks. It was like 30 plus strikes, 30 plus kicks, right? So he was ready to go on both ends. And if you want to wrestle him, it's kind of like Abu Bakar versus, Jared Gooden. He was just like, bro, like, if you want to wrestle, bro, we could take it there, but I'd much rather just strategically, you know what I'm saying? Pick you apart. So that's like I'm saying. It's just these fighters look so dangerous. And of course, Mike Hamel, he's I believe he's like 2-3 in his last 5. It hasn't looked very good for him. So it's not like this is the most impressive win. But I do say, man, you got to give the man some credit. We got to give the man some praise, because to walk forward against a dude who was putting it on you like that, to walk forward, keep walking forward. He reminded me of a Raging Al, of an Al Iaquinta, you know what I mean? He kind of gave me that flavor, right? His name is Magic Mike Hamel. This dude comes out with the crazy shades and whatnot. He's a character, man, and you love those types of dudes, but I'll just tell you what, man. Like I said, I'm very high on a majority of the Nurmagomedovs. How can you not be? But it just scares me, because I feel like week to week, we're not going to be able to have these conversations without mentioning one of the many Nurmagomedovs, or the Magomedovs, right? Because I have to make a quick revision, AJ. I had said in the last show that I think it was Magomedov had fought in Brave, and then he had just won, but I was wrong. Believe it or not, it was Magomedov who fought in Brave. These dudes have like the same name, man. So it's like this whole entire, it's tricky, but these dudes are taking over the game, man, and I love to see it. You got any other thoughts on that Mike Hamel, Usman Nurmagomedov fight?
Besides that, finally, we have someone who's actually legitimate, like a legitimate contender who I can see reigning for a long time in the Bellator 155. Man, no, not really. He's a scary prospect. You got to watch out.
I agree. And folks, I'll just say this. Do not be surprised if, some of these Nurmagomedov don't even parlay their shot into the UFC, because I have a feeling they're not going to want to fight each other in the UFC. So it'll be like, we're going to hold it down in Bellator, hold it down in UFC, hold it down into PFL. Like I said, this is going to be the next Gracie lineage. It basically already is. So we'll move on to the next one, man. Next one was Tyrell Fortune versus Jack May, man. And I'll just say, optic-wise, I thought this was a very interesting matchup, just because Jack May's like 6'8", right? Just fucking hulking, right? Super tall. But it lasted very long. Tyrell Fortune, I mean, he's a wrestler. This dude was like a minus 1,500 favorite in the betting lines. And he got the job done. TKO round 1, man. It wasn't very competitive. It wasn't very close, to be honest with you. This is kind of like a filler on the card. But I just like to see Tyrell Fortune TKO Jack May and then immediately get up and start screaming, talk that shit now. I was like, oh, this is personal. Like, okay, y'all really about it. Like, you not playing around over here. All right, understood. Now, let me ask you, AJ, and this is just like, backseat fight watcher, you know what I mean? Armchair, fighter, or whatever the case may be. How do you think the optics change of a fighter? Just, the whole entire thought process behind the fight when it's really bad blood, when it's truly bad blood, to like not be respectful martial artists after the fight and say, hey, good fight, man. You know what I mean? You did a good job. That was all just trying to build up the fight. But to be like, talk that shit now, motherfucker. Like, we in here. What do you think goes into that?
I mean, personally, I like it. You know, like the fact that he was able to get up, because he even explained after, he's like, "Yo, he was sending me all these DMs talking shit. Talk that shit now, boy." Like it made me excited, but also you kind of don't. I don't know if we want to see that going forward, just as far as, you know, leading to scraps and other things, extracurriculars outside of the octagon. But it's weird because it's a catch-22 in my book. You know, you can fight angry and you can fight mad, and one of the, you know, a quick. What's the word, like a foreshadowing a little bit for the next week. That's one of the reasons why I like Marvin Vettori, man. If you get an angry Marvin in there, you're dangerous. Like, he's dangerous. But you get like an angry, I don't know, more often than not, if you fight angry, you're not fighting clear-minded, you make mistakes, you can get capitalized on. So it's hard. It's weird to say, but man, he brought that passion, and it was very exciting to see for me, man. I was hyped up.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was awesome. But like you said, man, Jose Aldo versus Conor McGregor, right? McGregor riled him up, got Aldo pissed off, and then knocked Aldo out because he didn't fight how he normally fights, right? You know, probably Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw, probably the same exact thing. Like, you know, so sometimes it does work, and that's why I'm kind of hesitant and skeptical on that preview of Marvin Vettori versus Kevin Holland, because I like Vettori, and I, you know what I mean, early foreshadowing, I'm really favoring him in this matchup. But if he gets a little too angry, man, it could be his downfall, because he can go into brawl mode, which is, you know, Vettori does, and can get knocked out, man. Kevin Holland is a sniper. So, you know, we'll talk about that more, you know what I mean, next week, right? But yeah, man, this was, like I said, for these Bellator cards, sometimes it's like, it's not, and even if you listen to the Weigh-In podcast, which I talk about all the time, right? Basically doing free advertisement for those guys. Not because, you know, I want to necessarily, but because this is very knowledgeable individuals, a former fighter and one of the OG referees of the game, and Big John McCarthy and, you know, Thompson, not Stephen Thompson, Josh Thompson. There we go. Right. Former UFC fighter, former, you know, Strikeforce. Anyways. The reason why is because even when you listen to their breakdowns of the Bellator cards, they'll be like, all right, man, there was like 2 fights to talk about. The rest of it, it's just kind of, you know, came and went, right? And that's what I'm saying is, like, Bellator, in comparison to the UFC, they're still lacking some depth. They're still lacking a little bit of that production. But, I mean, hey, this next fight was one of those close fights that I thought should have been a split decision. And Neiman Gracie is facing off against Jason Jackson. Now, I think that we got robbed of a great fight, AJ, because of the weirdness that took place in the first round of this fight. So, Jason Jackson and Neiman Gracie, they come out, center of the cage, right? They start, you know, kind of going at it, seeing what they're going to do. And then next thing you know, Jason Jackson is like trying to get on top, sprawl on top of Neiman Gracie, and gets his whole entire face raked up against the cage. And he said in that, so what happened right there was he stops on top when he has position, right? He has a great position over Neiman Gracie. He just stops, and Neiman Gracie just jumps on his back. And the commentators are like, oh, crazy reversal. But in reality, Jackson just stopped fighting. He was just like, bro, my eye, referee, he was trying to talk to him. And what he said after the fight, which I thought was very revealing, is that he felt like his eyeball was hanging out of his eye. Like, he was like really hurt. Now let's talk rules for a second, AJ. Let's just talk if you're a referee, right? If you're a referee and the referee did stop it to let the doctor take a look at it and then gave the position back to Neiman Gracie, which, you know, it was a little wonky, right? But if you're the referee and Jason Jackson can't continue, how do you rule the fight?
That's no contest if you can't continue, right? I mean, especially in the first round, that's a hard one, because when it happened, it was such a bang play that it looked like it was a reversal. Yeah. And even I was in those, like, damn, that was smooth. That was smooth. But you saw him on all fours, literally just didn't move. There was one of the lady fighters that got caught with, I think it was Megan Anderson's toe. And was it Alpha Cat Zingano?
It was Cat Zingano.
It wasn't Cat Zingano, where she just stood still, just like, nah. And it was the same thing. He was just like, nah, like hands all four, cat pose, just nah. Yeah. So it was interesting to see. But as a referee, it's a hard one, because they had like back and forth for a good minute and a half, maybe, of grappling, and like while you're trying to defend yourself. And like, to me, if you feel like your eye is falling out of your head, you're going into survival mode. Yeah. Like it's war. Like we're dying, and bro, my eye's hanging out. Like I'm gonna bite you. Like I don't give a fuck. Like we're fighting, bro. Like this is crazy. And he was very calm, and he said his vision didn't come back to the third round, and he fought a hell of a round and a half, more round, and whatever that would be, like 8-9 minutes. Yeah. So it's crazy. But I mean, as a ref, I think he did the right thing. at the wrong time.
Sure.
Like yeah, it was such a weird way to like have Gracie get on top and then stop it and then go from I mean, hard call. I guess.
I hear you. I think that the actual correct decision was if Jackson couldn't finish, he would have lost. It would have been a TKO loss, actually, not a no contest, because he injured himself. You know what I mean? Like,
they pointed that out on the you're right. It's since he injured himself, it would be a TKO for the other guy.
Now, just for a second before we move on to the last fight, right? Because it ended up going right, a nice ground fight after Jason Jackson got a couple big slams and whatnot. I still think Neiman Gracie probably should have edged it out because he did more damage. You know what I mean? He had Jackson in trouble a couple times. You know what I mean? I don't know. Jackson got the win, and it was just unfortunate that the fight played out like this. It would have been much more definitive and much more clear if the injury never took place, in my opinion. But nonetheless, so here's the thing about this whole entire eye situation, man. When you suffer something like that in the fight, right, and your mind immediately races, you can't control it, right? Your mind just jumps to something, and your mind probably jumps to, oh, I might not ever be able to do the thing that I love ever again because I'm losing my vision. You know, my life is going to be drastically. This is all transpiring while this is happening in that split second, like all these thoughts racing in your mind. You can't blame these people for just stopping, but at the same time, you should know that you're in the middle of a locked cage with another person, and if this was life or death, you can't stop. So how do you, just give me your opinion on that? We can all understand. We're all human. We all understand that, right? But don't you have a job as a fighter that you protect yourself at all times? That's literally what they tell you.
I was literally about to say, that's literally what they tell you. No matter what, you don't even stop when the bell. You stop when I stop you. Like you keep swinging until the referee stops you. That's the rules, man. That's such a hard thing because he's, you know, I can only imagine if you've ever been in like a panic situation or, you know, something crazy's going down. Hopefully, you know, a lot of people never are, but it's so fast that it happens slow. Yeah. Things are broken down and your mind is working so fast that you're contemplating all these things. So I can only imagine what he's thinking, you know, like I'll never be able to see. We got to feed my family. All this stuff's going on. Well, you have a savage on you trying to choke you out. So you can't fault him at all for just stopping. And no one can really say, not even me can really say, you know, this is exactly what I've done. But you would think in that situation, man, you and another guy are literally wearing nothing but skin tight underwear. Yeah, you better start just swinging for the fences. Like, come on, man. This is.
That's the part that just troubles me a little bit because I'm like, I get it. And even for the cat Zingano, that's a perfect example because she just froze and she was like, nope. Like but she's probably thinking too, I just went blind. Like, God damn it. You know, and Megan Anderson is sitting there like, I'm ready to kill this person. You know what I mean? Like, what's up? You know, what are we doing? But that's just part of the thing. And I think that the fighters put the referees in a tough position sometimes because now the referee has to say, okay, well, now let me pass the responsibility on to the doctor. And now the doctor has to make a choice. And the reality is that Jason Jackson said verbatim, I can't see. And the moment you say I can't see, you immediately have to stop the fight. That's generally how refereeing goes. You stop the fight because at the end of the day, what's most important is the fighter's safety. So should this fight have even continued is the question, and probably not. You know, what do you think?
It wasn't like he was writhing in agony in how the Bilal Muhammad Leon Edwards eye poke was, the second one. Sure. Where he like legit, we all knew he was like, oh, you hurting, like he's hurting bad right now. It was very strange because he kind of just froze up. So it was almost like his lack of energy and like what's the word I'm looking for, like emergency, you know, pursuance. I just butchered that, but it almost made it less urgent for the ref. Like he was just kind of like, you good? Like your eye hurts? You can't see. You sure? Looks like you're seeing.
Yeah, that was part of all of the weirdness that came about with it. The referee reaction, and we'll talk about the referee being a little slow on his job in the next fight too. But yeah, referee reaction was a little weird. The fighter reaction. At the end of the day, they let Neiman Gracie get back to position. I don't think it was the actual same position that he was originally in. I think that Jackson was in a spot to get up a little bit easier. But listen, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, right? You know what I'm saying? Like you trying to get the edge up to get the advantage. You in the locked cage. cage with another savage, man. And at the end of the day, man, let's not take away from Jason Jackson, because a win is a win is a win. And at this point now, man, listen, he's probably going to be challenging for the welterweight strap in just another fight or two. Now, obviously, we're not as tuned into the Bellator scene. They just released media member rankings for the first time in Bellator history, so it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. I can't tell you right now who the top 3, top 4 people who should be challenging for the title next are. But it'll be interesting just to see how this thing plays out, man. So let's move on to the main event, which was Pitbull versus Emmanuel Sanchez, number 2, right? The first one was a close one, right? That was damaged back and forth. But at the end of the day, Pitbull, he got the job done, right? Now we get a rematch. We got homeboy who is, tell me this ain't hilarious, from high school, man. Dude just fucking doing the little, I don't even know what you call it is, but for folks just listening, this dude does the little, like, you put
the dip tap.
Yeah, you do a little. Yeah, exactly. How you tap on your chew before, you know what I'm saying. You put the tobacco in, right? It's just hilarious. This dude came in, razor focused, all that. I think he was ready to go, man. But Pitbull's power, Pitbull's wrestling is something else, dude. His poise, his composure, it was just ridiculous to me, because what he did is says, I'm going to fight a dude who's got a crazy reach advantage over me. He's way taller than I am. I'm going to stand in the center of the octagon, and I'm going to dictate where this fight's going to go. Emmanuel Sanchez, he was trying to, close the distance, trying to calf kicks, trying to see how he can get in. He tried to do a very interesting. He tried to throw a right cross and then a calf kick after it, and ended up getting caught. He didn't get caught like crazy on the chin. He actually got hit in his shoulder, got dropped, and arm and guillotine from there, and it was game over. Now let me ask you, AJ, man, I counted it back, right? So there was this thing where, folks, I'm putting my hand out for the folks who are watching and for the folks who are listening. So I'm putting my hand out, and this is basically Emmanuel Sanchez's hand while he's getting the arm in guillotine. And within the span of less than 3 seconds, his hand goes from flexed to extended, or it goes from extended to flexed. Excuse me. So his hand was like this, and then it went flexed. And if I'm not mistaken, I did go to school for this stuff, so I hope I retained anything. When your hand goes from extended to flexed, that's your body naturally shutting down, right? That's you going to sleep and your body protecting itself, so you're flexing up. Right? It's kind of like when you kill a spider and its exoskeleton curls up. That's just, the physiology of the body, right? That happened less than 3 seconds. Pitbull had to be like, hey, ref, this dude's asleep, bro. You know what I mean? Like, what's up? Come down and come get this dude. I'm not going to let go because this is my job, but, like, I'm just letting you know you should probably come get him because homeboy's asleep. And dude even kicked him. Pitbull even did, like, a heel kick to Sanchez to be like, yeah, look, he's not moving. He's not responsive. The referee moves his hand a couple times. This dude was asleep for a long time, bro. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to make. It wasn't close. Pitbull, absolute domination. Dude defends his belt again. He moves to 32-4 in his MMA career, arguably one of the best featherweights in the world. But the referee, man, what do you think about that? What did you just think about that late? Like, do you think that does something to the brain, shutting the brain down for an extended amount of time? What do you think?
100%. Yeah. You lose oxygen to the brain, man. That's brain damage for sure, 100%. Well, it was weird because I didn't think he was out. And then he said for the second time, yeah, he's out. And I was like, oh, no, this dude's really, like, he's legitimately out. And then he heel kicked him. And then the referee went and wagged his arm. And that's how I was like, Jesus Christ, this guy's been out for a good, 15 seconds already, guys. And then they rolled him over, and, it still took him a good, doing all the protocol, make sure he's right, sitting on the bench and everything. But it was insane, the fact that he had to tell him a good, 2-3 times, like, yo, this guy's out, man. And it was weird because even Pitbull did this thing where he had him, and he told him, like, hey, this guy's out. He looks at him, and then does it, looks back up, like, oh, you, like, all right, I'm gonna squeeze harder. Yo, he's out. Like, no, get him. It was crazy to see, man, especially with all the shenanigans from before.
Yeah, and it also spoke volumes to me because I said that's a master of strangulation right there. That's a master of just putting his opponent away right there. To be so relaxed, just to be like, hey, man, I do this every day. I put dudes to sleep all day long. I'm just a savage like that. Yeah, it was also crazy just how quickly Sanchez went to sleep, right? Now, one thing you can say is that was the first time Emmanuel Sanchez has ever been finished in his entire MMA career. He is now 20-5, so you went 25 fights or 24 fights without being finished. 25th one, he can still arguably say, I've never tapped, because he did not. He just went to sleep. So, you got that one in the bag right there. You know what I'm saying? But, hey, man, this was an interesting fight, and at this point, it goes to show that for Pitbull, outside of AJ McKee, we don't know what's next for this dude, what else he can do. And I have a suggestion for you really quickly, AJ, before we move on to the word on the street, man. What do you say Pitbull pulls a Michael Chandler, and Pitbull has a knockout win over Michael Chandler too. So if you think Michael Chandler is impressive, you've not seen the best that Bellator has to offer yet. What do you think about Pitbull if he gets the job done against AJ McKee? And that's a big if, because AJ McKee is a killer, 17-0, crazy long reach. Dude's got almost like a 10-inch reach advantage, and he's way taller. Dude puts people to sleep like it's nobody's business. If he gets the job done in impressive fashion against AJ McKee, what do you think he says? All right, man, I want the winner of Ortega Volkanovski in the UFC.
It'd be interesting because who was the other Pitbull that fought in? Wasn't it Patricio?
Patricio Pitbull is at lightweight. He's
So
at
the older
155.
brother fought in UFC.
Yeah.
So it's been a while since we've had a Pitbull in the UFC, and it was a long time ago too. And Michael Chandler knocked out Patricio. After that fight, Patricio told Michael Chandler they're going to fight. Then Patricio knocked out Michael Chandler. Mm-hmm. So it'd be crazy to see him come to the UFC because that's a whole saga. That's like years and years in the making. Family rivalry, and they're from I forget where the Pitbull brothers are from, but they're Brazilian, correct?
Yeah, they're Brazil.
Yeah. So just having the whole like Brazil versus America rivalry again, another nostalgia factor. That I think it's a good move. I don't think they'll actually do it because of Bellator and UFC promotion, but
of course. So my thought process wasn't even necessarily like, this specific matchup or whatever. It's just saying that like Pitbull, arguably, he has an argument to be one of the best featherweights in the world, if not the best. So why not test yourself against UFC, the best of the best? What's up?
He's also the lightweight champ, is he not?
Yeah, he's a double champ, man.
He's a double champ in Bellator.
Yeah.
So I mean, one of the all-time greats for sure, 100%. So I was just clarifying.
No, for sure. I think there's two double champs, or at least there was. It was Pitbull, and then it was Ryan Bader, and I think Bader just lost his heavyweight belt or something like that, right? But nonetheless, man, it was incredible. You know what I mean? Performance. It was an incredible display of dominance, I should say. And at the end of the day, folks, I just hope that the UFC and the Bellator can start doing these cross-promotional matches because I just think that'd be awesome to see, man. The best of the best, truly. That's what this MMA sport's supposed to be about. That's what's supposed to differentiate MMA and boxing, is that we're not building up these opponents, and we're not only looking at money, we're looking at number one versus number two. Give me the best you got versus the best we got, and let's make it happen. So interesting to see, interesting slate of fights, man, and that is Bellator. Obviously not UFC, but we break it down because MMA is MMA, and we love the sport, man. So we not assessing the damage, man, and we not keeping it pushing this week. No matchmaking for Bellator because, we do primarily focus our program on UFC, but I do want to hit the word on the street, man. So what I want to talk about today isn't exactly MMA news, what's popping in the news stories, but it kind of is at the same time because there have been a lot of fights announced, upcoming fights for the UFC, right? So what I want to talk about specifically, and this is what I'm going to do, AJ. I'm going to throw out these matchups, and I just want you to give me your initial impressions, right? First and foremost, I'm going to start off with the big one just recently announced. Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz have been slated to fight in the UFC's first ever 5-round co-main event of ever. First off, where the hell did Nate Diaz come into this equation? Where is the Bilal versus Leon Edwards rematch? Give me some impressions, man, and give me your impressions on now the UFC being open to doing co-mains that are 5 rounds with no title attached to it.
Well, first off, Derek, I got to say, man, I tried to buy this. This is on my birthday weekend. I tried to buy tickets. They sold out in 30 seconds.
Jeez.
So if anyone's listening out there, they want to send some my way. Yo, shout out. But, bro, first off, Nate Diaz does what Nate Diaz wants, apparently. He just calls up Dana, yo, I want to fight that guy. They're like, all right, man, we'll square up. Let's go. So it's crazy to see that Nate Diaz can just come out of nowhere and make a fight and then make history and have the first 5-round co-main event. It's crazy. So especially non-title fight co-main event, because they've done, multiple title fights that are all 5-rounders. Yeah. And there was one where it was three title fights, not the last one before where they all made it the stretch. Mm-hmm. And I forget if it was anyway. It's just it's a long night of fights, so it's crazy to see. But you're not gonna do Nate Diaz any shorter than 3 rounds. We know that he comes out late in the fight. He likes to put on pace. He likes to weaponize pace. So you're not gonna do it 5 rounds. So it makes sense to see, but it's kind of crazy, man. That just like I said, Nate Diaz does what Nate Diaz wants, and when Nate Diaz calls, Uncle Dana answers and says, "All right, let's run it, man. Let's make me some money."
Clearly. And at the end of the day, Nate Diaz puts asses in seats. And if we actually going to have fans there, then who better to put than Nate Diaz, who's going to come in talking. His odds of winning this fight are very low, in my opinion. After seeing his last outing against Gamebred, Jorge Masvidal, it just made me say, like, all right, we have to remember Nate Diaz is not the same Nate Diaz from 2012. You feel me? Like, this is 2021, bro. He's got a big name. He makes it happen. He's exciting and he's game. He's definitely game. That's the name of the game for the Diaz brothers. But at the end of the day, Leon Edwards is surging. He looks sharp against Belal Muhammad. And I'll tell you what, Belal Muhammad, I think he hits a lot harder than Nate Diaz. So no disrespect whatsoever, but interesting fight to look out for. And I don't have the date of that in front of me right now, but I have the date for the rest of these. Which one?
May 15th. It's they have another one too. What's the
I'm not sure, but hey, May 15th, we'll take it, folks. Tune in. Now I got another one that's really interesting, AJ, and this one didn't come out of left field because I don't think we were talking about this. Maybe we were. I think I might have even called this one out. We both might have, but Korean Zombie has been announced. That is, he's fighting the Hawaiian Zombie, Dan Ige, on June 19th. It'll be a fight night, man. This is a crazy bout. This is a huge opportunity for Dan Ige. This is taking a step back for the Korean Zombie, who I think that he somehow, some way to the UFC brass, he lost a lot of stock after losing to Brian Ortega, which he shouldn't have. This dude's a killer, but now he has to fight Dan Ige if he wants to keep his spot in the rankings. What do you think about this matchup?
Bro, this is a banger. This is going to be a lot of fun, man. Literally, you said it perfectly. The Korean Zombie versus Hawaiian Zombie. You're going to have two dudes just walking forward, throwing heat. I'm hyped, man. I'm excited. I do believe we called it early, so they might be listening, man, because this is a banger.
Dana, man, we got you. This is what we do out here. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's a really fun matchup, man. You know what I mean? That could be a main event or a co-main event, depending on, if they decide to stack up that card like they are trying to on a couple different ones. Now, let me go something a little bigger in terms of notoriety as we start to, conclude our time here. We got Alexander Volkov versus Cyril Gane on June 26th. I don't think either of us expected this one. I thought Volkov was in no man's land just because it's like, I thought Derek Lewis rematch probably would have been the best bet, but instead they say Cyril Gane, let's rock, let's make it happen. You this contender, right? You're not really rushing to the belt, so why not fight this dude? Now, Curtis Blade said it himself. He was all like, fighting Volkov is a different battle right there, man. This dude's frame is unlike any other sparring partner you're going to be able to find. This dude is 7 foot something, you know what I mean? Not just 7 foot like something, right? Dude hits like a truck. He could hit you from across the cage. What do you think, you know what I mean, just about this matchup right here? One of these dudes is going to probably lose a lot of stock if they lose, whether it's Gane or Volkov. So, the winner, what is the best case scenario for the winner of this matchup, in your opinion?
And this is a new samurai Volkov, too, not the old school Volkov that Derek Lewis fought. Man, this is a huge fight for them because it seemed, like you said, Volkov was kind of in no man's land. It seems like no man's land more so is a feeding pen for the up-and-comers because Cyril Gane has a lot to gain, no pun intended. But he really has a huge step up to go because if he's able to put on a show and fight like the way Cyril Gane normally fights, in and out, fast, hit you hard, kind of roll, and that new breed of heavyweight, especially with how Volkov's been performing lately, man, wow, this is a test. And when this one came out, I was like a little underwhelmed or like under promoted, I guess, because this is gonna be a scrap, bro. This is gonna be fun.
I think it's because they try to build up the Cyril Gane versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and we got like a really boring fight. So now they're probably like, Cyril Gane is having that association that Derek Lewis and Ngannou had after their fight. So it's like, oh, okay, bro, you better perform, you better show up. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's an interesting one. So let's move on. I want to quick burst these last couple ones to get them out the way because we're running out of time here. So don't go too in depth, but just give me a sentence. You know what I mean? Give me your impressions on this one. Charles Rosa versus Justin James also been added to that June 26th card. Give me some impressions on that.
Whoo, I mean, Justin James, I'm hyped on, man, but it's going to be interesting for the matchup on that one. Where it actually takes place is what I'm excited for. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if Rosa could keep it on the feet if he wants to. Is he going to utilize the black belt? Because that's probably be the best way to beat Justin James, who's going to walk forward and he's going to fight you. Next up, we got Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. The trilogy number 3 has been finally announced for July 10th at UFC 264. listen, man, this is do or die for Conor McGregor. It really feels like, Dustin, he decided to take the payday instead of fighting for the championship. He gave that to Charlie Olives and Michael Chandler instead. Fool's gold, you know what I'm saying? Winner of this. Does the winner of this step away for good, retire, call it quits? You know what I mean? What do we need to do at this point? What do we just get the money, retire?
It's like what? That's exactly my thing. Because all right, this is a cash grab. We all know it's a cash grab. Cool, I'm in. Yeah. We're buying. But like what next? I guess is the big question. Because you're right. So let's say we'll go a little fast. Everybody gets beat up in the playground. But like that guy leaves, like, all right, cool. Like he's, he come back. Look, it's just a weird situation.
Yeah, I agree, man. It'll be interesting, man. I think it'll be a lot closer than the second one. At least I hope so. You know what I'm saying? I hope that McGregor takes this one a little more seriously, but then I don't want to discount Poirier's just domination in the second fight. So we'll see about this one. And then two more. The last one isn't even a fight, so just give me a sense on this one. But this one's Gilbert Burns versus Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. Also announced for UFC 264, man. Not what I expected. What do you think?
Not what I expected. Good test for Gilbert Burns. It's going to show if he's actually that high level talent. Interesting.
Yeah. Wonder Boy finally gets a fight, higher ranked opponent. Finally, there we go. Now we talking, you know what I'm saying? Call out's finally working. And then lastly, as we run out of time, as we conclude, just give me an impression on Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega's championship fight has been canceled. And now they're coaching the Ultimate Fighter 29. And their championship fight will take place sometime after the conclusion of that. What do you think about that?
I think that was an interesting call because I don't know if Volkanovski's that polarizing for a TV show. I know Brian Ortega has a lot of fans, has a lot of, that Latino and Hispanic heritage and blood behind him. So he's going to have a lot of support. I know Volkov's going to have a ton of support in Australia and New Zealand, but I would rather had Izzy and Paulo.
I just don't know who asked for this, man. I don't think anybody asked for this. Like this, like UFC just decided, no, we're going to give you this. We're like, okay, we didn't want that though, but okay. I'd rather give me Colby versus Masvidal. You know what I mean?
I was going to say Street Jesus and Usman. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Give me one of these guys, man. But at the end of the day, I guess it's just a bigger build-up for Brian Ortega and Volkanovski's eventual championship matchup. But like I said, once again, to conclude, man, I want them to get these championship fights out the way in the featherweight division so Max Holloway could finally get his belt back before he says, fuck it, I'm moving to lightweight, man, and I'm just going to try to, work something there. I don't know. We'll see what happens, folks. But this has been a breakdown. It's been alternate. It's been a little bit weird, but it's okay because we opening our minds up a little bit. We expanding our horizons. We checking out Bellator. And, hey, one of these days we might have to break down a one championship card. You never know, man. But, folks, you know what time it is. We broke it down. All the madness. We'll be back this Friday to do something maybe a little bit different. We might just break down just Holland versus Vettori in and of itself. Give you all a special little episode since we already did the main card breakdown last week, right? But ultimately, click the little notification bell. That way, no matter when we decide to drop our episode, right, it will pop up on your subscription box or whatever the case may be at YouTube. Drop a comment, but only drop something if you're going to say something dope, to get us going into the fight, man. Whether it's polarizing, good, bad, whatever, drop something and show a little bit of love, all that good stuff. Like, subscribe, allfactorsconsidered.com. AJ, any last words for the people?
Hey, man, I love the love. Thank y'all so much, brother. That's it.
There we go. Until next time, folks.